Hey, this is attorney Sarah Holmes, and today we are speaking with Amy Andersson of Price Turner CFOs. Good morning, Amy. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
And Amy, just introduce yourself and tell everyone what it is you do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Amy Andersson, and by the way, it's spelled with two S's, so if you're looking for me, please add those two S's. My company, Price Turner CFOs, was founded 7 years ago, and we provide CFO services and accounting services to small and medium-sized businesses. Now, I'm somewhat of an oxymoron because I am a CPA, and I do not do income tax preparation. However, what my company does is works as a liaison with the CEO and the tax preparer, also the attorney, such as yourself, and other experts that the CEO has. And this way, the CEO, the business, has the opportunity to have the best of the best, even though they're all part-time. Those experts are part-time.
Okay. And what kind of businesses do you typically work with?
So I work with small and medium-sized businesses, revenues from really 100,000 up to 20, 50 million. All right. Accounting is relatively the same for all of those businesses. Okay. I don't have manufacturing clients because those often already have an accounting staff on board. But I do service industries such as lawyers, such as consultants, training companies, virtual space operations, working with an insurance broker, a acupuncturist, and professional organizer. It really spans the gamut. A lot of consultants as well.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that sounds like quite a range of businesses you can help. So Amy, we just finished tax season. So we had a lot of changes last year to the tax code. What are some big takeaways for business owners from last year?
Well, as I said, I'm not an expert in taxes. However, as a CPA, I have to be very cognizant of those changes and such and talk to my clients about them. And what I have found, especially talking to the CPA tax preparers, is that there are many businesses who have been put on extensions. The tax law, even though it went into law, still is in the matter of being having regulations put out, and sometimes the code is actually contradictory. So what they found is they're having to extend, the tax preparers have to extend their business returns and therefore the personal returns of those businesses, and be able to get letters of how the IRS is going to resolve certain contradictions and such. So there are a number of people who have not filed at this point. Now, make a note, just because you have an extension does not mean you do not have to pay. So remember, an extension is just an extension for filing, not an extension for payment. So you still, even if you have an extension, have to pay what is an estimate of what's due, and then also be sure to pay the first quarter estimate for 2019 as well.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm finding is that individuals, because of the changes, the substantial changes related to itemized deductions and personal exemptions, a lot of people thought they could itemize this year and they're not able to. So things like the real estate tax, the mortgage interest, the charitable deductions, a lot of those used to be just very easily as a itemized deduction. This year, many people were not able to itemize. Makes the tax preparation easier, but no longer is the mortgage interest considered a tax deduction for those people.
So were a lot of people kind of surprised and getting some rude awakenings this year, maybe?
Yes, there were a lot of people who were like, oh my God, I owe money. I never owed money in the past. Others expected a huge refund and did not get that refund. And some of it even with W-2 employees because of withholding rates changed. But again, it was all based on estimates. A lot of people did end up owing money this year. It's going to be interesting. And that's an important point is make sure as a business that you're always putting money aside. If you're a W-2 employee, you're always having money put aside because you're paying as you go. With individual business owners, be sure to put money aside every single month, not just the quarters when you have to pay those estimated taxes.
hmm Do you think it's easier for people if they put themselves on a payroll and then they're having money taken out regularly, just as if they were, a W-2?
If the business is a subchapter S election, okay, then yes, do that. Because that's one of the benefits with having a subchapter S, is the owner or owners can take that salary and put money away. But the owner still has to pay on the net income as well. So be sure you're putting away enough for both of those.
Okay, so you still got to be socking money away each time you get paid for the taxes.
Definitely.
Yeah, it makes it difficult for people sometimes, cash flow wise, but we always tell people make sure you're kind of putting something aside every time you get paid.
Correct. So if you get paid by a client, figure out what your effective tax rate is after all your expenses and put that away. Okay. You can also, I encourage my clients to set up a separate tax account. Okay, so that you don't touch that tax account, and that's available. So then when quarter comes and you have to pay, $5,000 a quarter or whatever the number is, you already have that $10,000 a quarter. It's already in that separate account.
Yeah, I think it helps people a lot to separate it out and put it someplace that they can't touch it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of changes do you think business owners can expect in 2019 as far as tax and financial management? Any other big changes or problems this year on the horizon?
Again, I think it's going to be a lot of looking at what happened in 2018 with those taxes and then looking forward. And that's an important part, is where you're going to be in 2019. Now that you did 2018, there will be clarifications in 19, but not all that many changes this year, which is good. People can kind of take a rest and kind of go, okay, but now what does it mean to me? And don't wait until December to do that. Make sure if your taxes have been done, work with your tax preparer in the summertime or in November so that you have the opportunity to plan for what's happening. And again, similar to those itemized deductions that we talked about, a lot of people were not able to take those charitable deductions. So there's a thing called bunching that people are doing now, where if they want to give a lot of money to one charity, instead of giving every single year, they might be able to bunch it together and do double the amount in 1 year and none the following year. All right, so they might make a pledge for the 2 years, but they actually only pay out the cash in that 1 year. That allows them to get over that itemized deduction threshold, which is now really limiting a lot of people in those other areas.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. That's an interesting technique, because a lot of people, they do like to give to charity, but obviously they're also looking for the tax benefits of doing that.
Yes, and people are still going to give, but the bunching allows that to have a bigger impact on your own taxes. It's not a bigger impact, but if you are doing that also, let the charity know that you are pledging, but you're doing it in bunching. And a lot of the charities are now looking at that and saying, oh, that'll work for us, because there are a lot of charities that really won't get the money once people determine that they can't use it as an itemized deduction.
Right.
You still want to give. Yeah. So use this bunching rule.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's a great tip. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see business owners make in managing their business finances?
There are two mistakes that I've seen that are really, really big. The first one is operating your business from the bank account cash, because that does not give you any planning. If you have insurance, is one of those items that comes up usually just once a year, and you pay it all in full. Well, if you're operating out of your balance in your cash account, you're not looking forward to those expenses that might come up and planning for those expenses. If there is something that unexpectedly happens in the business, say you're able to take an opportunity and you don't have money set aside because you're just operating based upon the cash in the bank account, again, that's not good planning. And more companies look at that, and then something happens and they don't have the cash available to do that investment, to do that spending, to be able to pay for their insurance or whatever. And the same thing with people who have employees. They do their own payroll. And again, the payroll taxes may not be due, but there are many people who utilize those that withholding, not realizing that has to be paid to the government, whether it's the state government or the federal government, and they utilize that cash for other things in an operating perspective, rather than putting it aside or just using a payroll service so it's out and paid that day. If you're finagling with cash, which is really due to the federal or the state government, business owners can get themselves in a lot of trouble there.
Yeah, the people that do their own payroll make me crazy. Like when business owners tell me they're going to run their own payroll, I'm like, that is a terrible, terrible idea.
People are not experts in payroll. There are services for a reason, and there are big companies and small companies, and the customer service is what you get, and you pay for that ability to be able to just run my payroll, and it's done. Yeah. And again, you never ever want to get between the federal or the state tax people and those withholdings, because that can put you in jail.
Yeah, there's a lot of liability risk with that, like both, to your employee if you're not paying them the right way or at the right times, and with the tax authorities. I just think, people want to do it because there's online platforms now that charge a really low amount of money, but it's like you're not saving that much money. The payroll is not that much relatively.
It really isn't. It's one of those things as an outsourced CFO that I require my clients to outsource their payroll.
Yeah.
Because it just makes sense. Okay.
I think that's really smart.
The other mistake that I've seen is when clients think they can do the accounting, and they're not accountants. So I have one client who was recording everything properly, and she was reconciling to the bank account. In the process, though, she also was double counting her income because she recorded it as a deposit when it was coming from the bank, and she recorded it as a payment to the client.
Oh.
So her income was doubled for 3 years. When I started looking at this, for 3 years, she had doubled her income. And thankfully, the years for those tax years were still open, and she was able to get a refund.
Wow.
But that was one of the mistakes where if you do it by yourself, really have somebody look at it. It's who is a professional. There are people who can do their returns, their financials, and that's great. Okay. Is it exact? No, but is it close enough? Probably. When you get bigger, though, or even if you have questions as to, am I doing this right? It's always best to get somebody to take another look at it. That outside person who is also not emotionally involved is a good thing to have.
Yeah. I'm shocked by the number of people that still insist on doing their own bookkeeping, or they're still doing the TurboTax, and their businesses are growing and they've got all these deductions. Maybe they have some assets now. And again, I think it's a terrible idea. We always try to get people referred out to accountants, bookkeepers. I'm a big, big proponent of bookkeepers.
There's a reason there's a career out there. And again, the business owner is doing what they want to do. They created the business for a reason. They're doing that. And it's not to do the accounting side. It's not to do the numbers. Should they know them? Absolutely. Every business owner needs to know the numbers, but it doesn't mean you have to be in the details.
Yeah, I think when you own the business and you're running it and trying to grow it, your time is better spent elsewhere, like growing and running the business. And then you rely on these other experts, to run this side of it for you. And I think when people finally take that leap and they're willing to spend the money to do that, then they really see their business take off and have this huge growth because they're focused on the right things then.
Absolutely. It's an investment in your company. It really is. It's like in your industry, how many people go to LegalZoom versus actually hiring a good lawyer to work with you, to be able to identify, are there, I'm going to put a plug in because you're my lawyer, the way you handle the software that I create, adding that clause just makes me not liable for anything I create for those clients. Having an independent contractors, actually a contract that they sign that says specifically what they are doing and what I am doing. That is absolutely fabulous. And I'm not going to pull it off of a web or borrow it from somebody else because their business is not the same as my business.
Right. Yeah, I think people really underestimate the amount of trouble they can get into if they're not, being intentional about these things and setting them up in a customized way.
Yeah.
Everybody's business is different. So what size of a business do you think would be appropriate for an outsourced CFO like yourself?
So there are a couple of positions in the financial staff, and I'll just go through those. You mentioned a bookkeeper before. Everyone should have a bookkeeper, okay? And again, some people have their significant other, their college student. I suggest having somebody external because, again, unless it is somebody and you need to have somebody in the office right there. Nowadays, so many things are virtual right now. Transactions can be downloaded from the banks, from the credit cards. There is so much automation that is available. The bookkeeper can do that. So it doesn't mean they're sitting there manually entering everything, but they are recording it properly. And then there might be a staff accountant, and that staff accountant might be necessary when you get a little bit more complex. The controller comes into play, and a controller is where you're preparing financial statements, you're reconciling, you mentioned assets, you've got depreciation going on, or something like that. You've got inventory that you have to keep track of. The controller is going to be more appropriate with that. There also might be doing a budget for you, okay, and doing those financial statements in comparison to the budget with the variance analysis as to why. All of this means that the reporting is going on to the CEO or to the board, whatever it might be, so that everyone's informed, but they're not actually doing it. Finally, the CFO is the person you're looking for strategy. Where are we going? Not necessarily where we've been, although that's very appropriate with looking at customer profitability and product profitability, but it's more forward-looking in terms of the strategy. So the CFO is going to be involved, maybe somebody's financing, maybe you're doing a merger or an acquisition, maybe you want to expand into another state or even another country. The CFO needs to be involved with all of that to make sure that things are being done, that you're in compliance also. Mm-hmm. Because once you go into another state, all these compliance issues come up, especially nowadays with sales tax. There was a ruling with Wayfair is the internet marketing company. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court about sales tax. And now every state has been changing what is sales tax, what gets taxed. And in the past, you had to have a physical location in that state. Now with the internet, that's gone. So most states have now a threshold of how much you're selling, and no longer means you have to have an employee in that state. It's now how much is you selling, where those customers are, and it gets to be very, very complicated. My last newsletter was actually all about sales tax because people don't realize that if they sell a product or even a service, it may be taxable. In Pennsylvania, for a while, there was a regulation going through the legislature to tax accountants and consultants and lawyers on their fees, and that was not passed. But it's still applicable in other states. There's a web services. If you develop a web in the state of Texas, although there is no income tax in Texas, they do have a high sales tax. And somewhere the revenue department decided a percentage of what you charge for a website is going to be taxable. Where that percentage came up, I don't know, but they did. Yeah. So there again, as you get more and more complicated, as the business gets complicated, they should hire a CFO. Okay.
Yeah. We've had a lot of clients come that have like e-commerce businesses, or they're providing, business advice or services across state lines. And they're always asking about the sales tax and whether they're going to owe income tax in that state then. And I always tell them you have to get your accountant or, whoever you're using for your financial business advising on board to answer those questions for you.
Yeah, and it's similar to if you have an employee in another state, okay? Especially a lot of people work remotely nowadays. So you might hire somebody as an employee in Virginia. Well, you have to be licensed to have an employee. You have to be registered with the state, because once you have that person in the state working for you, you now have to pay, goes back to the payroll taxes for that state. And if there are local taxes related to that state, again, that's all required if you're going to operate in another state. So we're not in a vacuum anymore, and especially when you're dealing with e-commerce. We're all over the United States and often all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just geographically, where we're located in Philadelphia, it's like there's a lot of people in Delaware and Jersey and New York, and that's stuff that's like less than, I don't know, sometimes 5 minutes away, depending on what border you're on. So yeah, I think a lot of people get rude awakenings when they realize how much more complicated these interstate things are actually going to be for themselves.
And even in the state of Pennsylvania, we have a 6% sales tax, but in Philadelphia it's 8%, and in the Pittsburgh County it's 7%. And a business owner may not know that. All right, a tax accountant may not know that. They're dealing with income taxes. So the sales tax is important to know. And my team does know that. And that's one of the areas that I make sure that my team is set up, that we set up the systems for my clients to make sure the proper sales tax is being charged.
Yeah, that's really important, because I don't think a lot of the accountants necessarily deal with that end of it. They're concerned about the income part. So a lot of times people are confused, like, who do I go to for this? So that's a really good point. You can go to your CFO for that.
Yes, exactly. It's the operational part of it.
Okay, absolutely. Let's see. What do you think is the biggest tip that you could give a business owner that maybe right now doesn't have a CFO?
Separate your accounts, your bank accounts. Have an operating account where payroll would be pulled from, okay? Some of my clients also will have a payroll account, so they fund that, so they know it's out of their operating account. That's also a good thing to do, so you know it's truly operating. So if you're big enough, and that's a big chunk, especially if you're paying like bi-weekly or something like that, having a payroll account. And then we talked before about having a separate tax account. Again, that's where the taxes are going to be paid from, whether it's sales tax, income tax for the company, if it's an S Corp or whatever the situation is. And then again, the savings account is the other one. That's the new one that we haven't talked about. And that is going to be for your investment. So if you're going to grow the company, yes, you can go get a loan in many cases, but credit is one of those that you have to really have good credit. And there are often times when banks will require you to take out a second mortgage if you own something in order to get a credit line. If you don't want to do that, start doing your own investing and put it into a savings account for your business. And that way you can start saving that money that will be necessary if you find that you want to purchase something or a piece of equipment or something like that. Have it available. All right?
Yeah. A lot of people really, like when I talk to them, they really don't have the capital resources when they want to go expand. So then they're scrambling and they start talking about pitching investors, which a lot of times I think is a terrible idea, giving up equity, or they go for loans. And it's kind of like, if you had good cash flow and you were making money, ideally some of that could have been set aside for, capital expenditures later.
Exactly. And that idea of, oh, everybody's just going to give me money because I've got this great idea, it's not going to happen. You've really got to prove yourself. And people are not going to take a risk if you're not willing to take a risk. And that's one of the biggest things that capitalists will say, whether it's venture capitalists or the angel investors or whatever, they want to know, how much have you put into this business? And if you haven't put anything into the business, they're often not going to be able, they're not going to look at you as being serious in the business. So really putting it aside to create your own capital so you don't have to give away the store and have somebody else investing in your company. Because once they start investing in your company, they start managing the company, not you.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, the slow, the slow
Uh-huh.
decline to giving up power and control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many people want to do that? So a lot of people have the thought of, oh, I'll just sell this company in 5 years. But if you are the face of the company, that may not work either.
Yeah. Well, and the first step to selling your company is getting all this stuff straightened out from the beginning. Like all your books got to be crystal clean, pristine. Your taxes always have to be paid. You're never, ever going to sell a company if the back end is a mess.
Absolutely. And if you are not able to prepare financials for a bank just to get a loan or financial statements to be able to give to potential investors, you've got to get that. You've got to get your house in order. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think especially if you're building a business, hopefully one day to sell it, like you got to get a CFO on board to get, to make sure all that stuff is always lined up, to like the 9th degree, make sure it's all in line.
Yeah.
Okay. So
one of my clients just sold her business and it was a matter, she was out there pushing in and it's like, okay, can I have my financials? And literally, because we were there, because she's been hiring us as the CFO and the accounting staff, the financials were available immediately. Everything was up to date. There was no can you give me 3 weeks? No, it's available then. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm shocked by the amount of people. I applied for this program lately, for my business, and you have to submit all your financials and everything. And it's like my stuff is always up to date because I have good people, doing these things. So it takes me 2 seconds to pull this report from QuickBooks, and I'm sitting in this room and all these other people are like, well, I asked my accountant for it. It's been like 3 weeks. I got to call this person and that person. It's like, why don't you have instant access to your own business financials? That's crazy.
Yeah.
You can't run business that way.
The business financials are owned by the company.
Yeah.
The CEO may not have the wherewithal to go into the QuickBooks to get it or the whatever system is being used, but they should know who to ask. And if you don't get it that day, there's a problem with your financials.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was horrified by that.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can people find you? How can they contact you?
Okay. On LinkedIn, Amy Andersson, again with SSON. My phone number is 610-733-4224. And then also on the website at Price Turner CFOs.com.
Okay.
And there's a site there you can click in to contact me as well.
Okay, great. Price Turner CFOs.com. And are you taking new clients if anyone's interested in CFO services?
Absolutely. My company is growing. I'm also looking for bookkeepers as well. Good bookkeepers to join my team. But yes, I'm always taking new clients.
Always a need for bookkeepers for sure. Okay. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us today, Amy. I think business owners will find this very helpful and they'll be able to grab some great tips out of this.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Have a great day. You too.